Now that the USFL is underway, I thought it would be a good time for me to address my experience with the league and share my various opinions, uneducated as they are, about how I think it's going so far and what I like and dislike about the USFL over the first few weeks. Full disclosure here that I will be making a lot of comparisons to the XFL and its 2020 lead up and early season. I was a big XFL fan until it shut down for obvious reasons, and I'll do my best to review the USFL without bias, but no promises. So this clearly means that any video about the USFL is simply my opinion, and you guys are welcome to contribute to the conversation in the comments below. I want to start in this video by discussing some of the overall structure and launch of the USFL and where I think it shines and where it needs some adjustments, big or small. First, I want to start with a positive here, and that is the 8-team format. Now, the XFL certainly paved the way that 8 teams can work in a spring league's introduction year, but I want to give the bigwigs at the USFL credit as they didn't let the temptation of trying to be too different override their better judgment. This is a great foundation because it's enough teams for a simple playoff format, but small enough of a number to manage as the league establishes itself in the early stages. Next, I want to address something that might be a little bit of a mixed bag for me, and that's the cities and markets in which the league targeted for year one. The areas of Birmingham, New Jersey, and Michigan are probably the ones that I'm most excited about, as they do not currently have a pro football team. I'm okay with Houston because it's a huge market and it's very much a football town in a football state. So there's plenty of reason to believe that this market can hold as many as 3 or even 4 pro football teams, given you have the NFL's Texans and potentially the XFL's Roughnecks or whatever they might be called in the future. It's the other 4 locations where I start to wonder how much it can work long term. Starting with the Maulers, who will be based in Pittsburgh, there is no team other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just have a hard time believing that fans in Steeler country will stop worshiping the Steelers long enough to give another pro football team some attention, including the NFL offseason. Add to that the popularity of the Pirates baseball team and the Penguins hockey team, and the fan base already has enough to occupy their desire for sports. I'm just concerned that the Maulers will just muddy the waters and be left out in the Pittsburgh cold. Staying in Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia Stars could face some of the same issues as their in-state counterpart, as football fans there eat, sleep, and breathe everything Eagles from the NFL. Also, the Flyers hockey team and the Phillies Major League Baseball team is very popular. And if the 76ers from the NBA are competitive, then sports fans in Philly will be in overload pretty much year-round. This market is already jam-packed with well-established pro teams from all of the major American sports. As a result, I have serious doubts about fans creating even more room for a USFL team, or really any spring pro football team. One of the few disappointments for the 2020 XFL launch was the lack of attendance for the Tampa Bay Vipers home games. Even after closing off the upper deck of Raymond James Stadium, the crowds surrounding the first level were not impressive. For comparison purposes, the best attended Vipers home game was just over 18,000 people and then fell off to about 12,000 people in their second home game, whereas the St. Louis Battlehawks drew over 25,000 fans in both of their home games. The Seattle Dragons also scored attendance of over 25,000 fans in both of their home games as well. I think the only other team that used a current NFL stadium was the New York Guardians, and they also had poor attendance. Just under 18,000 fans, and a similar drop-off as the Vipers to 12,000 fans in their second home game. Now, I say all of this to show that there is some hard evidence that another pro football team in Tampa Bay may not be such a good idea. But that's exactly what the USFL did with the Tampa Bay Bandits. I get that Tampa Bay, on paper, seems like the ideal location for a spring league pro football team. Great weather, a population of over 3 million people, reasonable proximity to other cities like Orlando and Jacksonville, and a short drive to any number of beautiful beaches. I'd have Tampa Bay in my list of locations that's great for spring football, if not for the evidence from the Tampa Bay Vipers in 2020. I can't put my finger on the issue, but for some reason, fans just don't want another pro football team in Tampa Bay. Maybe the location is too good. There's too much to do. Maybe the weather is too good to saturate your life with football for 9 months out of the year. Whatever the reason, the Bandits may struggle with ticket sales and create problems for the USFL. The eighth and final market is New Orleans, and honestly, I'm not sure what to think just yet. I don't love the market for the USFL because they already have a major pro football team in the Saints, but I don't hate the market because New Orleans is a popular city in the South where football is super popular. Add some marginally sizable cities within driving distance like Lafayette, Baton Rouge, and Jackson, Mississippi, and there could be hope for successful attendance at Breakers home games. Now, I know that I've only measured these markets by how the games might be attended, but this is an indicator of every other aspect of fan interest. Similar trends have been found in television ratings and merchandise sales when compared to other pro sports and their game attendance. And while I liked the idea of only having spring league teams in cities that don't have an NFL team, I also realized that you can't put a team in Colfax, Washington. Now, there's obviously nothing wrong with the people at Colfax, Washington, but it's too small, too far away from other populated cities, and too expensive to offset these kind of setbacks. However, I do have some cities in mind that I believe could successfully host a pro football team. Located in the center of Ohio and home to almost 1 million residents, the city of Columbus offers tremendous upside. All other cities in Ohio, including Cincinnati, Cleveland, Toledo, and Akron, are around 2 hours away or less of drive time, easily close enough to attend a game or develop a connection with a team. Also, there are a couple of stadium options for home games, primarily Lower.com Field, which is the new home of Major League Soccer's Columbus Crew. I know that the stadium is soccer specific, but it could be worked out with willing parties by adding detachable goalposts and other things as to not disrupt the soccer aspect for which the stadium was built. If not, the other option could be historic Crew Field, where the soccer team used to play their home matches. Both options have a similar seating capacity of around 20,000 fans, which is perfect for a spring football league, as the DC Defenders and Houston Roughnecks proved in 2020 for the XFL. Next up, I can't think of a better city to receive a football team than San Antonio, Texas. In a state where football is a religion, it's hard to believe that one of its cities has 1.6 million residents but no pro football team. The nearby city of Austin may also draw some fans, so this is one of those few scenarios where a larger stadium could be needed. So, the Alamo Dome could serve as the home field for a spring football league team. I know that a 72,000 seating capacity is a bit much for spring football, but given that it's indoor, it wouldn't take a capacity crowd to make some serious noise and create an electrifying atmosphere. You know, St. Louis Battlehawks fans knows exactly what I'm talking about. So, in terms of unique location for football with an adequate population to support a state's most popular sport, it feels like a no-brainer to have a team in San Antonio, at least from a fan's perspective. So the last location that I'm going to mention is quite of a stretch, but you can consider this my shameless attempt at arguing for a pro football team in my home state. Charleston, West Virginia is not the first place you'd think of when deciding a location for a pro football team, and there is some valid reasons for that. The first obstacle is that there's really not that much to do in West Virginia unless you're an outdoors type of person. The other seemingly major issue is that Charleston is the highest populated city in the state, but only at 48,000 residents. But there's something to consider after hearing that scary number. West Virginia is a fiercely loyal state, and it has zero pro sports of any importance. So, if a pro football team landed in the middle of a state like Charleston, West Virginia, The support would be immediate and unanimous. Also, the people of West Virginia will travel like crazy for the sports they love. The prime example is found in Morgantown, West Virginia, located in the northern part of the state and home to WVU, the state's largest university and football program. The entire state seems to converge on Morgantown for every home game, and if not for capacity seating, this would be more of a literal statement. In reality, a Charleston based pro football team would be a spring league's version of the Green Bay Packers, a small town where the loyal fans hoard to the stadium or watch on television if they can't get tickets. Speaking of TV, those same Mountaineers at WVU are easily the highest rated TV program on Saturdays during football season, even more so than the NFL ratings in West Virginia. Basically, if a spring football league dropped a team in Charleston, West Virginia, the team would have an entire state cheering in their corner. Butts in seats and eyeballs on television games each week. That's 1.8 million people with only one pro sports team to represent their state. Yeah, I don't think fan interest would be a problem. Others might be able to make a similar argument for their state or location, but I'll let them do that. I truly believe in a Charleston, West Virginia market for a spring pro football team. Okay, shameless plug for a team in my state over with. Before I wrap up this video, I want to talk about one last thing, and that's my biggest disappointment in the USFL launch so far. And I'm sure it's no surprise to any of you out there trying to watch USFL games right now. Yeah, you know, this hub city model where all the games are being played in one of two locations, both located in Birmingham, Alabama, is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I know why the USFL is doing it. It makes all the financial sense in the world to only trudge through all of the red tape, regulations, insurance policies, and legal processes for just one city. I know that this grueling and time-consuming process would have to be repeated for every city and state in which games are to be played. And so, on paper, this was a nifty idea to build a foundation in one spot and give the league more time to complete the process in other locations, all the while generating some revenue to help fund such a task. But here's the problem. The reality of such a plan looks more like a black mark on the USFL. After the season opening game, which included the true home team Birmingham Stallions, the attendance at these games have been completely abysmal, and the USFL knows it. Let me throw in some what I would like to call speculative context. USFL officials were quick to report the attendance of the first game between the Stallions and the New Jersey Generals. A decent 17,500 people were reported, and 40,000 tickets were sold. Great news for the USFL. But now that we are in week 4, not a single game since that night has a reported attendance. But it doesn't take a genius to figure out the numbers are worse than embarrassing, even when the Stallions are playing now. Just look at this picture from week 3 between the Stallions and the Breakers. A far cry from game 1 of the USFL season. And of course, when the Stallions are not playing, the crowds are pretty well non-existent. It's pretty clear the USFL doesn't want to release the attendance numbers and are doing everything they can to ignore this very obvious problem. It's just too obvious that people from Pittsburgh or Michigan or New Jersey just won't be able to drive to Birmingham, Alabama to watch these games. The other issue that no one seems to be talking about is that for the Stallions fans, there actually may be too much access for a team that they have yet to have an opportunity to build any emotions for. They'll have the opportunity to see their team every single week until the season's over. So there's no rush to run out and get those tickets. If the Stallions only had, say, 5 home games, on the other hand, well, there might be more urgency to fill those dates. Finally, I fear that it's damaging to say that a team is from a certain city, but not give the people of that city a chance to bond with the team immediately. In the years to come, Philadelphia fans, for instance, will not easily forget that the Stars were a connection in name only, and the newness of the USFL will have long been gone before potential fans can build a connection with the team of their city's name. I just wonder if the USFL underestimated the importance of how fan loyalty is and should be created early by attending games, meeting players, getting autographs, and making memories that only come from physically being a part of history. Only one team is getting that advantage, and at the risk of sounding like a 5-year-old, that's just not fair. Moreover, if the USFL fails to capture audiences and all the potential revenue that they could generate, the league could be doomed, and we may all point to this hub city approach as the spawn of another failed spring football league. In my next video on the USFL, I'd like to discuss the logos and uniforms of the current 8 teams. I may even rank them from best to worst while throwing out some ideas on how I might improve the worst ones. And believe me, there are some pretty bad logos and uniforms for sure. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be looking forward to your comments below, and have a good one.